So it's just a huge honor today, the day after Thanksgiving, to come back on the show. We're bringing Ophir Tanz back again. How are you doing, Ophir?
I'm great. Thanks for having me on.
He is the award-winning entrepreneur and technologist. He's the founder and CEO of Pearl, an AI company, artificial intelligence focused on solving fundamental problems in the dental industry. Previously, he founded and led Gum Gum to several $100 million in global revenue by applying computer vision machine learning to drive and measure value for the digital media and sports sponsorship industries. He studied computer science and received a master's in information systems from Carnegie Mellon, an established member of the Los Angeles startup community. He actively advises and invests in startups. In 2017, was named one of Goldman Sachs 100 most intriguing entrepreneurs. And again, he was on the show. He was show 1270. And man, some of the things you were talking about even came true. Like you were talking about how AI is reading radiographs and insurance companies are reading it. And we just saw that lady down in San Diego go to jail because she kept submitting the same x-ray over and over and over. And and she's a stud. I mean, I know a lot about that lady. I think she's a great person, but man, what a bad mistake that was. And then we got Bruce Liberthal, who came on again today. And he went to dental school in sunny Buffalo, so he's still suffering from the Arizona Cardinals throwing that Hail Mary pass 2 weeks ago to win in the last second. Bruce, are you still celebrating that at home every day?
I'm not celebrating that.
You're not celebrating that? My gosh, when I went to dental school in Kansas City, I dreamed of the day I could afford to be a real doctor and go buy tickets to the game. I never got to see a football game. Did you ever get to see a football game when you were a poor dental student in Buffalo?
Yeah. My friends and I used to go to watch the Bills.
Really? God, man, back in the day, getting into a Chiefs game, you had to rob a bank on the way to get in. But my gosh, you're playing good too. Bruce serves as the Chief Innovation Officer for Henry Schein, Inc., reporting to Chris Pendergast, Henry Schein's Global Chief Technology Officer. In this role, he is the nexus of evaluating hundreds of cutting-edge solutions and technologies, advising the many medical and dental business units at Henry Schein on important emerging trends, and helping connect the company's global sales and marketing and distribution capabilities with important new products that help its customers run better practices and deliver excellent patient care. I've known Bruce his whole life. I mean, my God, because he was always I think it was in 85, he started Direct Vision Software. He was the general manager of Discus Dental Software back in the day. He's been a leader in dental technology for 35 years, and he practiced in Boston from 84 to 97. And then he was on the show. He was on podcast show 1038 with Innovating Technologies. And that was a great episode if you want to go back and hear more of that. And then we got a new man on the show, Dr. Markus B. Blatz, professor of restorative dentistry, chairman of the Department of Preventive and Restorative Sciences, and assistant dean for digital innovation and professional development at the University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine. So I assume he eats Quaker Oats oatmeal every morning for breakfast? I mean, come on. It was founded by Quaker Oats oatmeal. That man on the box, he wasn't from Boston. That was Pennsylvania. Where he founded by the way, I was looking it up on Thanksgiving. I forgot the years, but the Pilgrims, wherever they, oh my gosh, where do they come from? Plymouth, who left Plymouth, England. When they came to Plymouth, Massachusetts, I think they came 140 years before the first dentist from England came. So the Pilgrims beat the dentist by 140 years. That is amazing. That's a long time to eat oatmeal with rotten teeth. I hope they were edentulous. Where he founded the Penn Dental Medicine CAD/CAM Ceramic Center, an interdisciplinary venture to study emerging technologies and new ceramic materials while providing state-of-the-art aesthetic clinical care. Dr. Blatz graduated from Albert Ludwig University in Freiburg, Germany, where he was also awarded additional doctorate degrees, a postgraduate certificate in prosthodontics, and a professorship. Dr. Blatz is co-founder of the International Academy of Adhesive Dentistry, a board-certified diplomate in the German Society for Prosthodontics and Biomaterials, a member of multiple other professional organizations, and serves on the editorial boards of numerous recognized scientific dental journals, and is co-author of the international bestseller Evolution: Contemporary Protocols for Anterior Single-Tooth Implants. Dr. Blatz's main focus within clinical practice and research is aesthetic dentistry, with an emphasis on implantology and dental materials, particularly ceramics and adhesion. Oh my gosh, his bio is 1.5 miles long. And my gosh, thanks for all coming back on the show, because what we wanted to talk about was where's Nick? Is Nick?
I don't think Nick was actually attending. I think he just set it up.
Oh, Nick just set it. No, okay. So Nick just set up, but yeah. So basically, he started an artificial intelligence dental council, and I thought, so who wants to talk about what that's all about?
I'm glad to start if you guys would like. So Nick was actually brought on by Pearl. So Pearl, which is our company, which is obviously a for-profit, saw a need in market for general awareness, education, and independent research as it relates to the intersection of dentistry and AI. And initially took the initiative to form this group, and have been able to create a collection of many of the leading minds in dentistry. Certainly Bruce and Dr. Blatz are two of those folks. And the council was really established to help to demystify this notion of AI, right? So what is it on a fundamental level? Specifically, what is its necessity? What is its capability, and what is its utility? That's kind of how we break out how we think about approaching this multifaceted problem. And from the perspective of necessity, the question there is, why do you even need this technology at all? And one of the answers there, which I think is fundamental, is that if you look at the research that the DAIC is performing and other research that's out in market, is that humans are consistently very inconsistent in their diagnosis of radiographs, for example, and also as it relates to treatment plans, and have some pretty striking sort of research coming out about that. Secondly, the question is, okay, what is the capability of AI? In other words, what can it do? What can't it do? And what is in store in sort of the future from a pure capabilities perspective? And the third question is really around utility. So from a use case driven perspective, if you're an OEM or a PMS or an insurance carrier or a DSO or an individual practice, how does this actually affect your life in a practical and fundamental way? So the goal of the DAIC, which is a nonprofit, totally independent, the idea there is to conduct rigorous independent academic research and put that out into market, and also sort of help educate the market as to what this technology is, and sort of how it can be used in practicality. Because again, this is not something that for the most part is native to folks in the dental category. It's not native to folks in most industries. And we know that AI really in the short term and also in the long term is poised to have a really profound impact on the category. That's already happening today. And it's really important that folks have a resource that they can trust to learn more about it and get educated.
What I always wonder, say, Markus is always talking about adhesive dentistry, and you have companies like Delta Dental who have hundreds of millions of claims that go all the way back to the first composite. Do you see a future where you could work, this nonprofit council could work with like Delta Dental and say, let us run through all these claims, because like dentists will say that their average composite lasts 10 years, and then you see all these research studies that show they last 6.5 years, and that metal amalgams last 35 years. But you'll never ever meet a dentist in your life that thinks a metal amalgam lasts longer than its plastic composite. Whereas Delta Dental would have the answer. So would Blue Cross and Blue Shield. You know, do you have any insurance connections that might let you analyze the data so we can solve some of these mysteries?
Yeah, I mean, one thing I'll say about that is that on the actual council leadership board, we have folks from Delta Dental and from Cigna and from Delta Dental in Massachusetts. Those components are sort of sitting on the board. In terms of data sharing, that's something that the council is very interested in engaging with, because it opens the door to a lot of research opportunities. So we're working with the leadership team and also members of the DAIC to obtain interesting data sets that we can then analyze.
You know, the dream of most dentists is to have their claims adjudicated quickly, if possible, close to real time. And one of the applications, one of the use cases, Howard, is for AI in dentistry would be to have claims be adjudicated very, very quickly. The way that would happen is if you think about how the industry works today, if a dentist does a root canal or a crown, often they have to send a radiograph with the claim, and then that claim and that radiograph is looked at carefully by a dental professional who's working on behalf of the insurance company. All of this takes quite a bit of time. The promise of AI in this particular use case would be that the AI software would do the job of the reviewer, look at the claim, look at the radiograph, and adjudicate it, you know, as close to real time as possible. So, you know, this is just one of many, many use cases where this kind of technology will really benefit dentistry.
And how far away are we talking about? I mean, how much of this, because you've got to remember, you know, Bruce, you and I are old people. They've been talking about AI. I mean, really, they were talking about AI at IBM in the 1950s, and now it's 2020. So, I mean, 70 years later, how much of this is still fantasy, pipe dream our grandkids will see, and how much of it might we see today, a year from now, 2 years from now?
Yeah, the term actually, you know, just historically was coined at a conference in 1956 at Dartmouth College, where they dreamed all kinds of things and thought they were just a couple of years from seeing this happen. The reality is the dreams got ahead of reality because the technology, enormous computing power, wide bandwidth on the internet, miniaturization of components, lots of different things that had to happen before AI was really possible. The great news now, and the Dental AI Council is just really timely. The great news now is it's not something we're wondering about in the future. It's actually here today, and there'll be expanded use cases for how it's applied in dental and in medicine going forward. But this is not, you know, a future fantasy. This is happening right now.
And you know, I always I was really startled growing up because my dad had Sonic drive-ins, and the guy he bought $1 million of meat from every year, I mean, they were friends. They went on vacations together. The whole value chain worked together because it was like a symphony trying to get a hamburger, fry, and a Coke to you for under $3. And it was really weird coming into dentistry where, you know, the value chain, the dentists versus the insurance companies versus other business models like DSOs or suppliers. I mean, it was like there was so much fighting between them. It's like everybody lost sight of the patient. And do you think AI will be able to, like some people love DSOs, some don't like them, some love insurance, some don't like them, blah, blah, blah. But I always look at the numerator top line divided by the denominator, which is the patient. And I always believe that you got to keep one eye on the patient and one eye on cost, or people aren't going to have the freedom to afford to keep their teeth. And do you think AI will be able to help? Like you got Arish on from Delta Dental. You got people on from DSOs. You got Louisera from laboratories. Do you think AI might be able to tie all these people together better, to unite them, to fight for the individual patient who just wants to save their tooth better, faster, easier, higher quality at a lower cost, and get rid of all this tribal crap on the top line?
That's exactly the idea, actually. That's exactly the goal. That's the goal for CAD/CAM technologies as well. I mean, we talk about digital technologies, which have really taken on. We teach it now, and now just as an example, at our dental school at University of Pennsylvania, we have really put much focus on teaching CAD/CAM technologies, digital technologies to our students. And at this point in time, I can tell you, we have over 90% of our indirect restorations are now being done in-house with the chairside CAD/CAM system. It's really taken off, and we really need to teach our students with in mind the patient. And that's such an important point, because all these technologies are totally, I think, useless unless we can really tie them together. And AI is exactly doing that. And I mean, we can continue the discussion, but I actually, even in much bigger terms, about healthcare and oral health in general, this is where all these data sets that we can get through the radiographs, and we can get through, the different technologies that are applied in dentistry, and combine that with the big data, healthcare data, with the general health, information of the patients, tying that together and looking at a much bigger picture, and coming up with answers to the questions. How is prevention correlated with that? How is disease exactly what you said? Now, how many people have, for example, carries diseases, and is it correlated with other diseases that they may have in a general health, perspective? I think there's a lot of things that we can look at that is certainly going to be tied together with AI.
Yeah,
that's the whole idea.
I would
one practical example, Howard, that I think zeroes in on your question is with AI comes what's called clinical decision support, or computer vision, the ability for AI to actually read a radiograph and determine disease or the potential for disease. So if you think about the average dental practice having thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands, sometimes millions of radiographs, sitting on those radiographs are undiagnosed disease. Somebody just missed it. It happens all the time. And so the ability of AI software to sweep through a library of radiographs and determine and point out to the practice, here are the patients with untreatment plan, unscheduled work, and then use more AI to go out to patients, get them scheduled and in the practice. These are really practical applications for patients, because it saves people's teeth and their health.
Yeah, and I would add to both what Bruce and Markus are saying by, there was a revolution in digital dentistry where offices became digitized. And the way that I think about AI is it's sort of the second phase of that, where you're adding a cognitive layer to digital dentistry, whereby you're able to do all these things, right? Real-time adjudication, candidate servicing, looking at populations of millions and millions of patients or radiographs, and actually surfacing higher quality diagnoses and treatment plans. And the most profound impact that I see AI driving in dentistry, because there are so many applications that are so interesting, but the most fundamental one is increasing the standard of care that patients are receiving. Because if you're able to better diagnose disease, whether it's early bone loss or periapical radiolucency or some sort of margin discrepancy that's forming any number of sort of items, calculus is routinely missed. That might call for some scaling and root planing, whereby you might otherwise not perform that procedure. You're going to elevate the standard of care so much, I would argue, more than any other technology in recent history. And that benefits everybody on a fundamental level, and it benefits patients the most. So there are implications for the commercial players in the space, whether it's insurance or DSOs and everyone, and a higher level of truth is going to modify how they operate. But ultimately, in my mind, genuinely, it's all to the benefit of patients at the end of the day.
Well,
when you think about digital dentistry, And I mean, for the most part, that has been always focused on designing a restoration and fabricating a restoration. Now we're moving with digital dentistry at the very beginning, like you said, diagnostics. That's where AI really has its strength. And then we talk about treatment planning. And to standardize that and calibrate that, you go to 10 different dentists and you come back with 10 different ideas of what it's supposed to do. Here we can standardize this with those tools to allow more patients having high quality care is exactly the point. Thanks, Howard, for pointing it out. I think that's the most important part of this whole discussion.
Yeah, and I think Markus talks a lot about these connections between oral health and systemic health. Obviously, very interesting. I think we're going to see a lot of activity in that space. It's going to lead to some sort of, better treatment and better lives. The way to get at that value and to solve that problem is via AI, because you're talking about large medical data sets, you're talking about large dental data sets, and you're marrying the two at scale, and you're helping doctors who aren't typically necessarily looking for all these indicators to more efficiently and effectively do so. And I do think it's going to play a major role in that particular vision.
Well, I mean, that was genius on talking about the diagnosis, because, I mean, that was a groundbreaking article when the Reader's Digest came out with that issue that said, is basically, I forgot the name of it. It was William.
50 patients and 50 different.
Yeah, he went to 30 different dentists, and he got 30 different results. And then the National Institutes of Health thought, okay, is this just sensational journalism? So they redid the study, but instead of 30, they did 100, and they had 2 that were the same. Those were the 2 dentists that said nothing. And then 3 to 100 were all different. So do you think dentists that you can actually calibrate dentistry? Do you think dentistry, and do you think the dentist can emotionally go along with that? I mean, dentists, you couldn't get 2 dentists to agree that today is Tuesday. How are you going to get them to agree on this diagnosis and treatment planning?
So this is not new, right? I mean, it's new in dental, but it's not new in healthcare. Medical doctors have been using clinical decision support systems for years. I mean, they're better today than they ever were, but this is not a new thing. The ability for this kind of software to be able to help diagnostics has been happening and growing and expanding for a long time. Keep in mind the way that this all works. There isn't just some magic software that gets turned on and all of a sudden it becomes a super genius in terms of being able to do diagnostics. The AI systems, the way they're developed is they're trained, and the training takes place with people. So there's, rooms full of doctors looking at radiographs, thousands and thousands of them, basically saying, and I'm oversimplifying here, this one's pathology and this one isn't. And over the course of time, what they're doing is they're teaching a computer with specialized software how, it's almost like training a dental student, right? How to actually see pathology in this particular example. And then this is where the machine learning component takes over, because the truly exciting part of it is once the computer knows, this specialized software knows how to do this diagnosis, as more and more data is fed to it, it learns on its own, becoming better and better at the ability to do all of this. So, you ask a fundamental question, which is, will dentists allow computers to assist them in diagnosis? I think the answer is yes, as long as we understand that this is clinical decision support. It's not clinical decisions. The computer is not making the decision. It is helping the doctor make a better choice.
Yeah, and I think Bruce brings up sort of the key point there, which is this notion of assistance, right? This isn't computers sort of delivering final answers. This is computers working to assist practitioners in their day-to-day activities, alert them to items that they might have otherwise missed. The practitioner always has the ability to override the recommendation or detection of the system. Some of this stuff is kind of subjective, and there are legitimate treatment paths that do vary for, and these guys obviously know this much better than I do because they're the real dentists here, but for a given set of detections and pathologies that you might find, you might want to take a different course of action depending on your perspective. So there's some sort of subjectivity here, and that's totally fine. What's not fine is outright sort of missing items that you otherwise could find. And I think your general practitioner doesn't fully pride themselves on just being the best radiologist in the world. They want to deliver terrific care. And if there is a device that is able to help them do that more seamlessly, increase the standard of care, decrease liability, generally perform better procedures, sort of deliver empathy to the patient, all those things that dentists do, I think that would be welcome.
Yeah, and the subjectivity, in my view, also creates enormous opportunity, because let's say a dentist or let's say an orthodontist is looking at a patient and there's possibly 2 or 3 or more different ways of creating a treatment plan. What the AI software can do is be able to work with the doctor saying, if you choose this treatment path, here are the things you need to think about, and here are the potential for success, or the length of the case, or however you're measuring success. The ability, and in implants, it's the same thing. So the ability of the computer to look at various treatment plan modalities and say, here's what you need to think about, or here's what I recommend you think about before you choose one versus the other, it's just enormously helpful. And again, AI is based on human input at its core. And so what we're doing with these decision support systems used to be called expert systems. It's basically putting experts in the box and helping doctors make better choices.
And I think when you take it at the very simple clinical level as well, let's talk, for example, about aesthetic analyses. Everybody wants aesthetic dentists, but very few people are really masters of it. Here can, for example, it's just geometry. This is one of the simplest, I think, areas where, you just use certain measurements in the patient's face and you can come up with a treatment plan. You can come up with the idealized aesthetic outcomes, smile design. This is one of the, I think, very, very clinical applications of it. And then talking about material selection. I mean, there's so many materials that are being thrown on the market right now, CAD/CAM materials, this and that. And I think many dentists are overwhelmed even with some of the just fundamental composition and then how to use them. And I think these tools, everybody should appreciate to having a tool at hand that can help you make the decision to do a smile design, without you having to be the expert in it, to get the right material and that patient that has these functional problems or these aesthetic needs and wishes. And I think this is an area where very practically and very quickly actually help is being provided by AI.
Yeah. And I think all this really speaks to the relevancy of the Dental AI Council, because we're making lots of proclamations here, and these guys are very involved with this technology. So am I. But in order for the market to be able to sort of get behind these ideas, they are going to want to be able to reference independent research. They are going to want to educate themselves about what this technology is and isn't. And I think that's why this is such a timely moment for an entity like this to exist, because there's such a need in market, I think, and a hunger in market to better understand these technologies.
One of the long issues I've had with dentistry since 1987 is that these dentists are signed up on 6, 10, 12 different plans, and they'll walk in a room and they'll spend an hour doing two MOD composites, and I'll say, well, how much do you get for an MOD composite? And they'll say, I get $250 each. So I was in that room for $500, and then you look through 14 different PPOs he signed up for, and he doesn't get $250 for any of them. It's between like $205 and $105. So I'm like, okay, I don't even know what you're talking about. Then I say, well, how much is the cost of your room? And he doesn't even know the cost of his room. So they never know if they're making or losing money. Imagine if you owned a grocery store and you had no idea how much you were paying for ketchup and mustard and bread and milk, and you were selling it at 12 different prices. Do you see AI ever getting involved financially to tie their Dentrix practice management software and connect that to their accounting software, to their insurance company, so that at least they finally know if they're making or losing money?
Well, I think you're getting into the whole subject, and this is one of the areas of AI, right? Which is, big data and reporting and analytics and so on. And so, yes, the ability of this kind of software to study their practice and maybe compare it to similar practices and coach a dentist in terms of, a myriad of practice building methodologies. These now would be based on not just someone's opinion, but based on thousands and thousands, if not millions, of data points that work. And so, sure, the ability for these analytics to help a dentist run a better business and understand their business is absolutely real, and it's happening in many industries right now.
Yeah. And Bruce brings up another good point there, which is a lot of what we tend to focus on when we talk about AI is this notion of computer vision. That's certainly, where Pearl focuses in reading various forms of imagery. And that's an exciting, sexy sort of component of AI. But there's also other applications of AI that are not oriented around computer vision, around sort of big data analysis and frequency analysis and semantic analysis. And these are all relevant and impactful as well. So those are also elements that the DAIC will be studying, and not just sort of limiting it to the computer vision realm. I just want to sort of be clear about the differences there.
So, but you do think it will finally answer William Eckenberg's question that he asked on the cover of Reader's Digest, February 1997, how honest are dentists, by actually publishing, statistical analysis to back up your diagnosis and treatment planning?
Well, ultimately, when you're able to point, say, a large set of patients and their radiographs to an independent third-party system, and it's able to sort of surface what it views as reality versus what has been done historically, then there's an opportunity to sort of arrive at, again, a higher level of truth. It depends on the exact application that you're referring to, but ultimately the idea again is to put this capability in the hands of practitioners in a real-time fashion, ultimately, such that they're able to work in conjunction with it to deliver more consistent care.
And Markus, I want to ask you a question about technology. You are a master of materials, CAD/CAM, adhesive dentistry. You came from Germany, and the difference between Germany and the United States, Germany really developed the laboratory technicians, the same level as dentists. I remember lecturing in China, and the only dental school in Hong Kong actually had the dental laboratory technician class was twice as big as the dental class. And I could see that, modern dental and all those big labs of China were doing so well because the dental schools massively developed the laboratory technicians. Then I saw the United States, when I graduated in '87, America was just closing down all the laboratory schools. They really developed the hygienist, and if they wouldn't have done that, we wouldn't even have hygienists. But sometimes I think, would America have been better off just developing the dental laboratory technicians where they can become masters and double masters and all that stuff, as opposed to putting all their eggs in technology like CAD/CAM? And that's what they were saying when I was in dental school. They said, well, my gosh, CAD/CAM is going to make all these crown and bridge. Why would you be teaching kids to make laboratory dental technicians? And I got to tell you a true story that you won't even believe. So then I graduated. I come out to school, open my practice in Phoenix, and I went and met my lab man, and he was making them in his apartment. And it was just a one-man show, it was crowns, and he was mixing the stone, and while he's talking to me, and he spit in the stone. And I'm like, did you just spit in the stone? He goes, yeah. He goes, the guy that taught me, he said there's like surfactants in your saliva, and if you spit in the stone, it won't have as many bubbles. And I thought, oh my gosh, I wished I lived in Berlin. So how would you compare Germany's massive development of laboratory technicians versus America just closing down all the schools and putting their money in CAD/CAM?
Oh, so interesting that you say that. By the way, I started out as a lab tech in Germany. That's how I started my career. And it's just a different, I mean, you really cannot compare the systems because there's a whole different educational system. And, many of the trades over there, like if you're a butcher, if you're a baker, if you are a dental technician, they go through very rigorous training. There's this whole system that has been developed over there for many years. But and then, by the way, later on I was at LSU, and we were one of the few dental schools that also had a lab tech program, and I always was very, very keen about that. But it's you're mentioning of lab tech right now is quite funny, because I think the tools are just changing. And back then they already told me, oh, forget about dental technology. It's going to be dead. It's just not going to be there anymore. And I tell you something, now with our students, for example, there were a couple of years where we cut back on, they don't have to do casting anymore. They don't have to do this anymore. Now, when we go more into the chair side digital world again, they do more laboratory technology than they ever did before. Not just necessarily with wax, of course they learned that as well, but actually on the computer screen. It's just a different tool. It's not that they are all of a sudden not needed anymore. It's just a different tool. And instead of using the wax, they learn it as well, because, by the way, you cannot be good in digital if you're bad in analog dentistry. You still have to learn the analog way. But nowadays, like I said, they design it on the computer, they select the materials, they learn how to use these materials, they learn how to fire them, how to glaze them, they do it for their patients, and then they understand how to put them in place, how to bond them in place, things like that. I actually believe right now, with CAD/CAM, our students and also lab techs doing probably more laboratory technology than before, just with different tools. It's not that different. Even though, like you said, I mean, the educational system over there and over here is just very different. That's why it's difficult to compare it. But I think, like I said, there's more dental technology being done just with the computer.
Well, Markus, young kids might be wondering, like a lot of times when young kids out of school, they say, well, Howard, where do you think I should learn how to place implants? I said, well, I think you should learn how to place implants from the guy across the street from you who's got to bail you out when you screw up. I mean, go to your periodontist or your oral surgeon, and don't fly across the country, because he's not going to be there when you screw up. And they always say, well, why would he want to teach me? Because I would be competing. And I said, because he'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing. So the question I ask you is, on this council, you have people from labs. You have Tom Dalton from National Dentics Lab. You have my buddy Lou Azera and his wonderful brother Nick Azera. So how do you guys sit at the table and have fun when you're trying to get the dentist to do chairside milling and he's trying to develop a crown and bridge lab? So does he try to sneak cyanide into your oatmeal, or how do you see on the same page?
I think actually the world is coming together more with that. That doesn't mean that the dental students have to do it themselves or will do it in the future. I think actually in a lot of dentists who do a lot of chairside dentistry now bring in a dental technician into their practices now. I see that a lot, because they can do a check of the preparation immediately after do the scanning. They can you can make the adjustments if you need to right on the spot, or you're connected. You're connected to the chairside dentist. It doesn't mean you have to do everything yourself. That's the connection, and that's where AI comes into place. AI comes into place again. Is the big key here. If I can still decide I'm going to send my work to my milling machine that I have right there, which is usually just limited to small, single units, whatever. Or will I send my files to my laboratory? But I can do that within split seconds, and I can discuss with the laboratory the case in much easier fashion than I could have done before. Actually, I think that also these two worlds are coming together much more easily with CAD/CAM and digital technologies right now. And everyone has their place. Big cases, multi-units, bridges, implant-supported restorations. These are things that will never be done in maybe not in the foreseeable future, at least in the practices.
And Markus, since you're the only one here that you're in a dental school right now, you're a prosthodontist at the University of Pennsylvania School of Dental Medicine. I mean, What is dental school like right now? I mean, is it just online learning, or do you have classrooms? This is December 1st. What is school like there right now?
I mean, we switched very quickly after the lockdown. We have done, or invested in online teaching actually for quite some time. We were able to switch very quickly on online. But we opened our clinics in June already. Probably one of the first dental schools actually, but of course with all the precautions. And actually our clinics right now are buzzing, as you know it. And all our colleagues say the same things. People, they couldn't spend a lot of money. Now they're coming back and they want to have dentistry done. We do a lot of dentistry right now. Our didactic courses, though, are almost 100% online right now.
Yeah, and I got to tell people that when they just casually shut our dental offices down for 2 months, from St. Patrick's Day all the way to Cinco de Mayo, holy moly, did they upset patients. I mean, the first patient I had when I backed open was an 80-year-old lady whose front tooth broke off the day they closed down the office. She was so screaming mad. I think if she would have found the person that actually closed down my office, they would have been missing 2 of their front teeth. While I have you on, you also are the founder of the Foundation for Oral Rehabilitation at FOR.org. Tell us about that.
Oh, that's I would say, an organization that is focusing on education. It was, I think, originally developed. It's a non-profit organization, and they have educational, content available, mainly focused towards implantology.
To implantology?
Yes, mainly.
And do you see AI benefiting oral implantology a lot?
Oh yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Yes.
In what ways?
Well, again, some of the keys that we see is the treatment planning part, and specifically for implantology, that plays a main role. Where to place the implants, how to place the implants, and designing the restorations right in front. This is where all these pieces come together. Diagnostics, you do your scans, you do your the treatment planning, you have your CBCT, and then you design your restoration, and you can then, of course, perfectly place the implants where they're supposed to be based on your restoration design, select the materials, and these tools, I'm sure, will be automated in the not too far future.
So Bruce, we were talking about why labs would be interested in this. I assume the people for Delta, it seems like Delta Dental got involved with AI, at least to stop fraud. That's where I've seen fraud. Why would Henry Schein? Why would Stan Bergman and why would they be all into this? Well, why is Chris Pendergast, why is he interested in AI?
Well, we're interested in it purely to provide tools to our customers, who are all doctors, right, to practice their craft better, to help patients more. So one of the use cases, Howard, we talked about already today is this whole notion of computer vision. I think it's one of the most easy to understand in terms of what AI can do that's really practical for a doctor. But because our software is in so many practices, the ability for us to take these brilliant software products, these computer vision software products that can look at an X-ray and recommend where pathology is, but to marry that technology to the practice software and provide it to the dentist at the point of care is truly wonderful. And we have the ability to do that, again, because our software is so widely distributed in so many practices. And so we're truly excited about doing that with respect to computer vision and a myriad of other examples. Another example, just quickly, is the notion of smart toothbrushes. These devices, which are made by a number of companies, as you know, are home-based devices where the software associated with the smart toothbrush is coaching the patient, and there's a little bit of AI, I guess, associated with that as well. But the real magic for us comes in the fact that we're taking the data from those toothbrushes, which represents a patient's home care, their behavior, and we're taking that data and we're bringing it into the chart and using AI-like enabled technology, correlating a patient's chart, which represents their clinical reality, right, with their habits, and at the point of care, correlating that data so that it's easy for a hygienist and a dentist to talk with a patient and say, you see what's happening based on your habits. It has real effect on your health, positively or negatively, and really alter behavior. So there's a myriad of ways that this technology will affect people's health in a positive way. And so we're involved because we serve dentists, and we want to help them do better work and grow their practices.
Yeah, it's so obvious. I mean, for 30 plus years, you see patients come on, you can tell they're right-handed because when they're brushing the right side, the whole facial, the second molar is polished. And then you look at the same exact tooth on the left side and it's caked in tartar, and it's the same human, the same toothbrush. And it'd be really neat if the smartphone could say, after you brush your teeth, dude, you never even brushed your upper left tooth. But I'm not too confident in the smartphones, because before I left for work this morning, I sent my mom a text, and when I got to work, it never sent. I would assume my smartphone knows that when you're texting your mom, if your big fat thumb doesn't hit it just right, it would just send it for you, but it didn't do that. Ophir, I want to ask you a question, because you were saying, I read you say that to chart a path forward for AI, the dental community needs to understand the science and recognize common fallacies surrounding AI. What do you think some of the common fallacies surrounding AI? And I want to tell you, I'm very for artificial intelligence, because I have not been impressed by humanity's natural intelligence. I don't think AI has a very big bar to jump to pass natural intelligence. But what do you think some of the common fallacies surrounding AI are?
I think there's a number of them, and they tend to be consistent again across industries. One is this notion of, you hear AI, we've been trained by popular culture to think of sort of killer robots and humanoid object, like entities that are moving around and wholesale replacing humans. So I think that when people hear that, sometimes they immediately are a little bit concerned. Is this going to replace me? Is it going to eliminate my job? Stuff like that, right? And I would say that, honestly, and I'm curious to hear what Bruce and Markus have to say about this, but I just don't think there's a good understanding of AI at all unless you've really been exposed to the state of the art today. So what could this technology do? So from the perspective of computer vision, have you actually seen pathologies show up on a particular radiograph in real time? Have you seen margins be automatically marked in a 3D or intraoral scan? Have you asked questions about how the machine is able to do that and actually looked at studies around efficacy and accuracy? I just don't think the basics are really known. And again, it's no fault of anyone. This is not what people study by and large. So I think that there is the goal of the DAIC is really to demystify this technology. And I think that it starts with the basics. So, okay, how does AI work? I don't need to have a PhD and understand the mechanics of neural networks to really need to understand all this. But this stuff is straightforward enough that you could understand this notion of collecting data, labeling data, feeding that data into a machine, and enabling it to sort of establish a generalized understanding of what a pathology looks like, and then be able to apply that generalized understanding to dental imagery, for example. And then from a use case perspective, there's lots of implications there. And there's also potential fear where, as if you're an insurance carrier and the practices that you work with, if they're usually using this technology, are they going to submit a lot more claims because they're finding a lot more disease? And are a lot more claims going to be denied on the insurance side because now they have this supercharged technology that is able to look at these claims and perform enhanced utilization management? And I think the answer is kind of yes and no. It really is just, again, truth. If we want to achieve truth and become more proficient and more accurate, that will have some implications in market. I think it all kind of nets out equally, honestly. I don't think there's some massive winner here that some insurance carrier and everyone else loses or anything like that. And I don't think that in 5 years from now, we're going to be thinking about these things in this context. I think we're going to be living in a new reality where we have enhanced truth, enhanced standard of care, and that's going to be how we do business. And then it'll be on to sort of the next thing. That's my perspective, at least.
Yeah, I think that that's essentially exactly how I feel about it. Our role at the Dental AI Council is a number of things, but demystifying the technology is clearly one of them. You know, what's interesting to me about the technology is, you know, when it was a fantasy and a vision, there were all kinds of stories, some of them in famous movies. My favorite is 2001: A Space Odyssey, right, where the computer kicks the astronaut out of the ship. The fantasy of that is just that. It's fantasy. The best way to understand AI is really that these are tools to assist and aid people doing their work or play. And what I think, and I'll finish here, what I think is also interesting is we're all interacting with this technology today and may not realize it. Anybody who's got an automobile that was made in the last 3, 4, 5 years is using AI constantly. The computers in cars today, especially in a car like a Tesla, or any of these cars today that can drive or park themselves or avoid or collision avoidance, and all of these things are based in AI technologies and a lot of computer vision.
Yeah, I think it looks like magic today, and it becomes utility in the near term. And I think that once it becomes the utility that is sort of rote and par for the course, people stop thinking about it as even calling it AI. It's just it's another capability in the office, and that's a trend that's going to continue, I think, for a long time. Again, across dentistry and all industries.
Well, you know, I love what you said about truth. I mean, truth, I mean, if you go to Wikipedia, truth is a property of being in accord with fact or reality. And we all know humans just believe a ton of stuff that there's just no fact or reality for. And I'm not just talking about my oldest sister who's been a Catholic nun for 35 years, but in a lot of our debates, I mean, she's always talking about things I just can't measure. You know, I mean, you just can't measure or observe half of her arguments. And again, going back to that composite thing, I mean, it's just bizarre how you can show a dentist a plastic inert filling, and after 8 years of college, he believes it lasts longer than a metal filling that's half mercury, and most of these fillings fail from decay. Well, you know, a filling that's half mercury, you'll never find mercury in the children's vitamin. And then the other half is, you know, silver, zinc, copper, tin. The whole thing's just a anti-life form, and it's made of metal. I mean, if I found someone living behind a trash can and I showed him a plastic fork from KFC and a metal fork and asked him which ones would last longer, the homeless guy would say, well, the metal fork from your kitchen drawer. But it takes 8 years of college to brainwash someone until they think the plastic inert filling lasts longer. And again, I just think if AI could just start showing dentists like, come here, buddy, you're about 100 miles between Pluto and the planet Uranus, and we're just going to try to reel you in and show you some data, but here's 100 million plastic fillings, and guess what? They lasted less than the metal ones. So I think, I'm really, again, I hope AI answers the William Eckerberg's question, how honest are dentists, published on the Cover Reader's Digest in February of 1997. And at the time, all the dentists were outraged about Reader's Digest. Everybody was saying, well, cancel the issue. And I'm like, dude, this magazine sits on every grandma's desk in the world, and it's an honest question. And so I'm going to be mostly interested in watching the bubbles pop when dentists start seeing realistic observations. And it's troubling because sometimes I'll spend an entire day showing them that they're losing money by doing this PPO. I mean, you signed up for a PPO, you're doing this filling for $100 revenue in a room that cost $125. I mean, most people, when they want to just waste $25, will go shopping. But dentists will spend an hour in an operatory fixing your tooth just for the chance to lose $25. And so I just think it'll be really, really, really interesting. I'm going to look at it as augmented intelligence. I got my natural intelligence. And then my hand is holding a hand device which augments my natural intelligence. And I have found this journey with the smartphone to be very interesting. How long will it be before AI is just in your iPhone for everyday purposes, Ophir? How long before it'll say, hey, you just told your sister to turn right and you need to turn left? And no, that movie doesn't start at 8, it starts at 9.
Yeah, I mean, AI is all over the iPhone today. So if you look at Siri, we're able to sort of talk to it. There's the speech recognition there, and then it's actually answering questions that you may have or queries. If you look at the camera component of the phone, all the photo enhancement that it does, all the things that it does to sort of take a blurry image and make it look beautiful and crisp, that's all AI. So it's all over the place, just like Bruce was saying. It's integrated all around us. I mean, it's even in your thermostat. If you set a certain temperature set, I mean, it's all over the place. So I think that the majority of this technology is going to continue to pervade our lives in ways in which we're totally unaware of, but we know that life is just a little bit better. And then you have very explicit applications like the ones that we talked about here in dentistry, where it's a very active interaction with that technology on a daily basis, and you're really seeing it in action and getting a lot of value out of it. So yeah, it's there.
And also very important, a lot of dentists have hobbies, and a lot of them, I mean, Bruce started programming in 1985 when it wasn't even a thing. I mean, he was going into computers when I can remember computers in 1987. Still, most people didn't even know what they were. In fact, my dad called it an electric typewriter. That's what he called my first Intel 287. He goes, oh, so that's one of those new electric typewriters? And but if a kid was, or if you had children or grandchildren, and you wanted them to, and you were trying to say, hey, go into AI, would you start him, if you have never programmed before, would you start him in Python, or what would be the journey to know a fraction of what you know?
Well, I think as it relates to programming languages themselves, really it's about learning the fundamental data structures and approach to sort of just programming a computer. And then the languages can be swapped in and swapped out. They're just semantics at that point. Certainly Python is a very popular language for programming AI systems for a variety of reasons. Not the only one by any stretch, but it's a very popular one. But really, if you want to be a good machine learning engineer, then you first need to be a good computer engineer and programmer. So you have to start with, like anything else, with the fundamentals.
And the fundamentals and explain the difference between artificial intelligence and machine learning. Is that synonyms of the same thing?
It's not a synonym. So artificial intelligence is sort of the parent layer, and a subfield of artificial intelligence is machine learning. There's lots of different approaches to trying to create artificially intelligent systems. A lot of them and their underpinnings go back, like Bruce mentioned earlier, to the 50s and 60s. The first neural network was developed, I believe, in the 60s. It had something like 40 neurons. Now you have millions or billions of neurons in a particular neural network. But there's other approaches like symbolic programming that are fields of artificial intelligence. It just happens to be that machine learning, taking data sets, feeding these data sets into neural networks in such a way that these machines could understand and generalize patterns, happens to be the one that has really been effective over the past 10 years and has taken off. And part of that is also because of the advent of GPUs, which are originally sort of made so advanced for gaming purposes. And what GPUs are able to do is very, very simple mathematical calculations very, very rapidly. And that's effectively what you're doing with a neural network. So because of the advent of GPUs and basically the identification that somebody had, Jan LeCun and others, that you can actually take the power of a GPU and bring back this notion of a neural network and actually have it be feasible because you can perform the calculations quickly enough at enough scale that you can maybe do something useful. That's what sort of thrust us into this renaissance and new AI spring. And that's why we're here today talking about all this, is because in the very recent history, we were able to sort of bring these technologies back to life and breathe new life into them because of the computing power that has come about. Now, certainly there have been a lot of advancements as it relates to machine learning, but really the underpinnings and the core mathematical models that make it possible are exactly what they were in large respect in the 60s.
Yeah, and Howard, I guess for me, just to keep it simple, AI is really a very large area of study, but essentially what it means is software that has the ability to simulate human reasoning and thinking. Whereas machine learning, which is a subset or a cousin or a sister, is the ability for computer software to learn and reprogram itself based on experience.
Well, Bruce, what I love the most about AI is I know it will never take away my job as a dentist because only an idiot would do my job.
I'm not commenting on that.
You can't be intelligent and choose my job. So Bruce, would you tell your baby grandkids? I got how many grandkids? I got 6 grandkids. To be a dentist or to be an AI programmer? What would be the better advice?
I don't know. That's a tough one. First of all, I have no grandkids, but if I did, I don't know. You know, I'm the wrong person to ask that question. And the reason I'm the wrong person to ask that question is I was a dentist, and people assume that because I started programming and formed a business out of it, that I hated dentistry, and that's why it happened. The reality is I loved it. But I also love the computer thing, and you know, it was the tug of war between one and the other. I don't know. You know, when it comes to me talking to my own children about these kinds of things, I always say, do what makes you happy, and the rest will follow.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I mean, you know, my father was a dentist. He birthed an AI programmer. The world needs both, I think. So I would also point people in the direction of what's interesting to them.
Hey, so is there anything I missed that you wanted to talk about, or is there anything we didn't cover that we should?
I would just make one PSA, which is that by the time this podcast comes out, we will be accepting membership. There's been a huge influx of interest and activity on the membership side of the DAIC, and that's an opportunity to get more deeply involved with the effort. So I would encourage folks, if they're interested in becoming involved, to visit the dentalAIcouncil.org website and join up. We'd love to have you.
So what does it take to become a member? I'm on your site now, dentalAIcouncil.org.
Yeah, on the top right, you can click on Become a Member, which right now you'll be added to a list, but we'll actually be officially accepting members. And you can see the parameters there. Everyone's welcome. There's sort of different tiers of pricing depending on what you do in market, but all, you know, very accessible. And the opportunities there are to get more involved with research, get access to other members and be able to network, you know, early access to the data that we're putting out in market, sort of typical trade group type stuff, and advantages as you know, as other folks.
And they can follow you on Twitter at Dental AI Council, at dentalAIcouncil.com, and on Instagram. They are Dental AI Council, and so yeah, Dental AI Council. Well, hey, Ophir, seriously, man, you've given me twice. You've given me an hour of your life that unfortunately you'll never get back. Same with you, Bruce. But so now, since those two each gave me 2 hours of their life that they can't get back, my gosh, I'm totally going to make Markus come back and be tortured again for an hour. Markus, whenever you want to come back and just be tortured for an hour,
should we talk about metals versus composites or something?
No,
ceramics,
I just want you to answer the homeless guy living behind the dumpster. Will the KFC fork last longer than the metal fork out of my kitchen drawer? If you could just answer me and the homeless guy, because we're totally stumped that it takes 8 years of brainwashing to have more faith in the KFC plastic fork and the Happy Meal. So thank you so much, gentlemen, for an hour of your life. Bruce, be sure to tell Stan the man Bergman I said hello, and I hope you guys have a rocking great day.
Thanks, Howard. You too.
Thank you.